Welcome, everybody. This is the Common Good Candidates podcast. I'm Robb Ryerse, Political Director of Vote Common Good. We are excited to have you as a part of this podcast, as a part of the audience listening to some conversations that we have with the extraordinary, ordinary Americans who are running for office around the country. You know, this democracy thing is a participation sport. And these are people who have jumped in and said, you know what, I'm going to do this. I'm going to be a part of this really important endeavor and run for office. And today our conversation is with Kyle Kilbourn. Kyle is running for the United States Congress for the House of Representatives in northern Wisconsin. He's kind of way up there. It's actually as I tell him in the conversations, the furthest north I've ever been in the United States. It was when I was visiting with him in his district. This is a great conversation with a really great candidate that you're going to enjoy. So here we go now to our conversation with candidate for Common Good, Kyle Kilbourn. Kyle, thanks for being on the show.
Thanks for having me.
So great to see you. Listen, let me ask you this. Let's begin with the end in mind. It's November 6th. What have you accomplished? What are you proud of? What are you feeling?
Yeah. For me, I am a first-time candidate. So for me, it's an amazing journey to run for office as like any candidate. And it's one of those experiences I hope more people do, and, to go in to the voting booth and vote for yourself, which is an amazing experience to have, which I haven't had yet, but I will. So for me, that's part of the journey. I have a growth mindset. So for me, it's like, the skills that I pick up along the way are going to be helpful. What I hope happens, is that we have change in Wisconsin. So, it's a very rural area, and in the last decade and a half, things haven't gone well for the district. And so for me, success is letting voters know they have a choice and getting out there to say, we can make this better. The district can get better. It can improve. It can with the right representation.
Mm-hmm. Now, you mentioned you're a first-time candidate. You're not a career politician. You're a husband. You're a product designer. You're, a regular dude just trying to live his life in Wisconsin. How did you end up running for Congress?
Yeah, that's a good question. In the past, I'd been active in student government and things like that, and neighborhood boards, and I got involved recently in a local county level tourism project. And someone had asked me, like, have you ever thought about running for office? I'm like, not really. I have a job, I have other commitments, why would I do that? But I thought about it seriously. I was a good friend, and I thought, well, let me think about this. I sort of looked at, all right, there's a lot of offices you can run for, and I encourage people to look that through and sort of decide what's important for them. For me, there's a lot of big issues that I want to solve and tackle. And so for me, those complex, challenging issues like healthcare, climate, and environment are issues that are best solved at I think the federal level. And so for me, that's why I decided to go for Congress and go straight for Congress. And knowing that the district, it's a challenge. We're very rural. It is a very conservative district, and we haven't had a lot of candidates sort of make that effort in the district. And so I thought, well, I'm going to give myself 2 years. So I started last April and wanted to, learn the ropes and get it done.
Yeah. So give us a day in the life of a congressional candidate. I mean, I think most people can't picture, like, what is this like? It's not like a job where you go and punch a clock and you're in the office for 8 hours. Like, what's a day in the life of a congressional candidate like?
It depends on the day. Every day is different. Some days I am on the road. So like, say last Sunday, I had to go to a picnic in Superior, which is about 4-hour drive with charging for my car. So I was left the door by 5:45 a.m. to get to the picnic by 10. Got to the picnic on time, met a bunch of people, gave a speech. and then drove back home. And then that evening started printing out thank you cards and letters. And so like that was one day.
Yeah. I mean, you got an election playlist that you listen to in the car, or podcasts? Like what are you doing to pass the time in the car?
Yeah. My music is more energizing, so I like current pop hits and uh more music that can get me going in the car. So it sort of helps me keep focused on the road and like memorizing my speech and things like that.
Yep. Yep. So, what are the biggest surprises on the campaign trail? Like things you didn't expect? Like what is it? Like what's it like? What are you like, man, I can't believe it's like this. People would not believe this.
um, you know, the gratitude people give me for running, like I
Hmm.
would not. I'm like, oh, well, yeah, of course I'm running, and it for me, I always thought of politicians as like self-centered, like it's all about them and what they want to do and about them. But people really appreciate someone standing up and saying, you know what, it's my turn to run. I'm going to do that, and like
Hmm.
that. Thanks. And the wall behind me can't say it, but I get like thank you cards and notes, and like that's like, oh, people actually like believe in what I'm
Hmm.
saying and what I'm going to do, and so like that is one of the more pleasant things of running.
Yeah. Yeah. I imagine, people like we're in a difficult political moment right now, and there's a lot of division. There's a lot of people who are kind of scared about what the future holds. They're scared about, getting into it with family and friends. Um, and, it, I imagine that for a lot of people, like someone being willing to step through the ropes and go do it, like be the man in the arena, as Teddy Roosevelt talked about. Um, that's got to be encouraging and inspiring to people.
Yeah, yeah, and I think we talk a lot about age in politics and the people that are running today. And so my district is a very older district, and so they realize it. And I even had
Mhm.
at the picnic yesterday, a former assembly member saying, I am old, and respect us. And I respect that, but they also like that there's someone younger in the race as well. So
Mhm.
like, all right, well, we do have to start thinking about the next generation and who's going to be here after we sort of
Mhm.
leave. And so I think especially for our district that skews older, like it is encouraging to have someone younger to sort of say, I want to take on this responsibility and run.
Yeah. You mentioned your age and maybe being a little bit younger than most people in your district. It's kind of a rural district. Now you're an openly gay man who's married to. I mean, you've got a wonderful husband, Chris, who super nice guy, really great guy. I like. How has that been for you on the campaign trail? How has that impacted things? How's that affected your campaign? Is it something that comes up a lot, or you think about a lot, or are you going to say, Rob, this is a dumb question because everybody's over it?
I think for the most part, people are. I was
Mm,
hesitant in the beginning. Like, what does it mean for my family, and am I putting ourselves in danger? Like,
yeah.
I didn't know. But I make a point of it in my stump speech to sort of yeah, I married into Wisconsin. I have a husband who's from the district, and so I give it out there to people. As being gay, you got to come out all the time, and it's just one of those things you get used to it. Coming out all the time. I'm coming out to
Mm,
people at this picnic. I'm coming out to the. It's just one of those things. But I think I haven't heard anything negative about it
mm,
so far in the race, and I think part of that could be, from Tammy Baldwin. I mean, she's been our senator, for 12
mm,
years now. She's running again. Like, she already broke that barrier. I think so. Most
yeah.
people, it's not a thing to worry about anymore.
Yeah. Does it does it ever bother you that you have to come out all the time to all of these strangers?
Um, I mean, it used to. I think
Mhm.
now it's more just, yeah, that's what it is to be gay.
Hmm. That's really interesting, and I mean, thank you for doing that. It's so. I mean, we talk about how representation matters. I always say, like, when people run for Congress, like, representative is literally the job title. Like it's literally the job title. And having someone who's willing to say, okay, I'm gonna be inconvenienced, I'm gonna be annoyed, I'm gonna put myself out there so that other people can be represented. That's it's really good and really important. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
um, Much of your campaign is about economic opportunity for the people that live in your district, and kind of taking care of the environment. You mentioned those two things. Um, you know, Tell us about what economic opportunity for people in your district. What does that look like? What does that mean?
Yeah. So, I mean, for me, I come from a working class background. My dad was a construction worker. My mom was a waitress and a retail store worker, a cashier. And so, my family struggled a lot growing up. I
Mm,
remember, them going from a house to an apartment to a trailer and, going to food banks. Like, this is, the sort of childhood I grew up in, is that my parents worked super hard, but, it just wasn't enough there to make ends meet. So I know that struggle. The thing for my parents was education. You are going to get
mm,
education, education, education. And so I sort of took that to heart, and that was sort of my opportunity to get further ahead. And so I think, our district on the 7th is one of the poorer ones in the state. It's very
mm,
rural, and the opportunities haven't been there of late. It used to be a very strong industry, so it had, forestry products, paper mills, and a lot of people in labor and in union jobs. And so that has sort of gone by the wayside. And so people, the older people are here, they're still staying here, but the young people that stay are kind of trapped. Like there's not a lot of, jobs for them. And I think one of the things I think this district can be at the forefront of is a care economy. And so
mm,
thinking about how do we take care of people that are here? So healthcare,
mm,
attracting nurses and doctors to the area is going to be critical. We have a strong tourism economy in the Northwoods. And so a lot of people come here for our world-class lakes. We have thousands of lakes and forests and fishing and all fun kind of activities in the winter. And so like, how do we, take care of people that come visit us? And so I think there's this really great chance to revitalize the district and sort of bring those jobs, keep our young people so they don't have to leave to get good jobs.
mm, mm. I love that phrase, care economy. That's great. Now you mentioned the outdoors life there in Wisconsin, both summer and winter. How is the climate crisis affecting things? And then, I mean, you're in a bit of a rural, more of a red district. Like, are do people care about how the climate's changing? And how do you talk about all of that?
Yeah, yeah. I think the majority of people do recognize what's happening around the world, and sort of they see it on the news. We are experiencing up here in the Northwoods. So like last summer, the wildfires in Canada, like it was
Mm,
crazy up here. Like the air pollution was so strong up here. Um, the other way to talk about that, I sort of reach across the aisle, is around clean water.
mm.
Um, it's a major issue on both sides of the aisle. Like everyone cares
Well,
about clean.
listen. Donald Trump said the other day in the presidential debate that when he was president, we had H2O. So I think that was the maybe the only thing he said that wasn't a lie. Yes, we had H2O when Donald Trump was president. I'm sorry for interrupting. I hear clean water and I think of Donald Trump talking about how we had H2O.
Yeah, no, no, clean water though, like it is one of those things that affects. It is a big district, so it's 26
Mm,
counties. So on one side of the district, it's about PFAS. These chemicals that we're finding in our wells and our drinking wells. Like it's occurring everywhere, and so a lot of people are concerned about that. Do we test our water, and what if we test our water? What if it has it in there, and then how do we pay for it to get remediated? On the other side, it's about farming and sort of these concentrated feeding lots, and so that's getting into the groundwater as well. And so I think focusing on those issues, even though it is a rural district, focusing on the issues that matter to folks.
mhm. Uh, it is a big district. 26 counties. You mentioned. You talked about driving for 4 hours to a picnic. Um, Tell us about the district, and when people kind of visualize and they picture it like northern Wisconsin, like this is you got a huge section of your state.
Yeah, yeah. The seventh district, parts of 26 counties. I always say northern Wisconsin is the shorthand, but there's parts of the people down the south that say, "Well, we're central Wisconsin," and so it's like it goes so far south that we're into central Wisconsin. But it goes from Marshfield, which is sort of the healthcare center of the state. There's a Marshfield clinics based there, and so a lot of doctors and nurses in there. And goes all the way to the western side, including Hudson, which borders the Twin Cities of Minneapolis and St. Paul, and then goes up to Superior, which borders Duluth, and then everything in between. So it's a humongous district.
Yeah. Wow. Now, when I think Wisconsin, I think cheese and I think Green Bay Packers. There's got to be more to Wisconsin than that, right? Tell us about Wisconsin.
Well, I live outside of Rhinelander, and we have the Hodag, and
Oh
so
yeah, yeah. This is I folks might not know. Vote Common Good is we're out on the road, and we stopped in Rhinelander and we're able to connect with you there. I think Rhinelander is the most north I have ever been in the United States. I was looking at a map, and I've been further north when I've been in Canada. I don't think I've ever been further north when I've been in the United States. So, kind of way up there. And I don't know if it's something in the maybe something in the air, something in the water. I learned about the hodag, which is a mythical creature that lives in Wisconsin.
it's a cryptic, so it's a definitely a mythical creature. It comes from the lumberjack era, and supposedly this wild creature lives in the woods. It's green, it has fangs and sort of spikes along its back, and it's the mascot for the city of Rhinelander. The high school team, every single business puts the mascot on it. Everything.
Is it just a Rhinelander thing, or is this like kind of like Bigfoot? Is kind of claimed by everybody. Is it a Wisconsin thing? This hodag.
I think Rhinelander claims it, but it lives in the Northwoods. So everywhere there's woods up here. It potential meet the Hodag.
Tell me, there's a hodag festival. There's a hodag parade that you get to march in. Like that's got to happen, right?
Oh yeah, there's a Hodag festival, which is there's the music festival. It's a huge music festival, but there's also the Heritage Festival, which is all about Hodag. They even have the best Hodag call, and so people compete to say, how do you sound like a Hodag?
Uh, um, Listen, I don't think you could be the congressman from northern Wisconsin if you didn't give us a little hodag call right here on the podcast.
I'd be a little afraid I might attract a
Okay.
Hodag, and so
Oh, well, I'm in Arkansas where we call the hogs. So I totally understand. Oh man. So, Kyle, you are one of our candidates for Common Good. You're a Common Good candidate. We ask voters to use the Common Good as their voting criteria. And we ask people that are running for office that if they're elected, they'll use the Common Good as their governing criteria. Um, it's not so much, everybody who's a Common Good candidate, agrees on a shared policy platform. It's much more a shared set of values. I'm curious, when you think about the common good, when you think about being a common good candidate, like what does that mean for you? How does that resonate for you? How does that come out in how you think about what your district needs in its leadership?
yeah, I think for me, it's about caring. Rural areas have a sort of heritage and a tradition of caring for our neighbors, caring for our animals, and caring for our landscapes. And
Hmm.
so for me, that sort of is, it's a bit of our secret sauce of what it means to live in a district like ours. We can go knock on our neighbors' doors and ask for things that we need, help, you know, that sort of thing. And I think, as a congressperson, I think, for me, it's helping to make sure that we bring that caring attitude to the government and say, you know what, we've been left behind in some ways, and sort of say, let's make sure that we think about what the needs are of the district and focus on that. And so for
Mm.
me, how that comes alive is, making sure that healthcare works for everyone, making sure that we champion clean water and the environment, making sure that we, make sure that we're revitalizing the district and the industries that live here and could live here. And so for me, that's sort of how I take common good.
Mm-hmm. Tell us about Tom Tiffany.
Oh, what do you want to know?
Tom Tiffany is the Republican who's the current congressman from your district, the incumbent that should you win your primary, you'll be running against.
Yeah. So for me, Tom Tiffany has been in office since 2020. Um, Unfortunately, I don't think he has the needs of northern Wisconsin at heart. So
Mm.
he talks a lot about the border. He talks a lot about impeaching Biden and trying to catch him in some bad checks or taking money bribes. And so that's what he focuses his attention on, is sort of trying to say, I got you, Biden. And so for me, it's about you know he's not running to represent northern Wisconsin. He has his own agenda that he's trying to bring into Washington and sort of impose on the rest of us. And so for me, it's about, all right, well, that's his agenda, but it's not the people of the district.
Yeah. Yeah. It seems like, Tom Tiffany's one of these guys that, is not a household name like, a Marjorie Taylor Greene or a Matt Gaetz or Lauren Boebert or Jim Jordan. Those names just kind of roll off my tongue because we, think about those people all the time. They're not, they are, you know, really problematic members of Congress, but they're not the totality of the problem. There's a lot of people that maybe most of us have never heard of who are really a problem. And Tom Tiffany's one of those guys, right? You know, didn't vote to certify the election of Joe Biden, member of the House Freedom Caucus, I believe.
Yes.
Someone who's, goes on the news, goes on CNN and talks about, the Biden crime family. He's someone who it seems to me, his political posturing has been, obsessed with Republicans and Donald Trump in particular being in power, obsessed with stopping Joe Biden politically, and not all that concerned with, what's happening with the good people of northern Wisconsin.
Yeah, I think you're pretty spot on there. If you look at sort of all the votes of, all right, if 80% of the members of Congress voted on something, he's always one of the 20 that voted the opposite way. It's just like, oh yeah, Tom Tiffany, he's there with every other sort of wacko out there voting against, funding the government or supporting Ukraine. He's that guy. He just doesn't have that sort of household recognition, as you say. I think the other thing, keeping in mind, he's been a career politician. He's been a politician in Wisconsin on the assembly level, at the Senate level, and now at the House of Representatives. And so he is in it for himself, and he has been for the last 15 years.
Just living on the government dole, that guy, It's like, oh goodness.
He
Now
has a
you,
now he might have a health care, if he gets another
yeah,
term.
yeah, exactly. He's not your only opponent. You're in the midst of a primary, which is kind of a late development in the election. Now, Wisconsin's got late primaries compared to everybody else in a lot of ways. It's not the latest in the country, but it's kind of mid-August, right? August 13th.
Yes.
How you feeling about that? How's it? Is this giving you a chance to kind of warm up for the real game? Like, or how you feeling about the primary?
No, I think we're great. Yeah, I do have an opponent. She did start late, so she started last year as well. Dropped out for 6 months and decided to come back at the last minute. And so I think that that'll be a challenge for her. I think for me, I'm focusing on working the coalitions that we can sort of win the November election. So, for example, we just got a recent endorsement from the National Education Association, and so that's a big win for us to sort of get those endorsements and build that coalition going forward. We do have this little speed bump on August 13th, but I think we're good. The other thing is, running a campaign takes a lot of money, and so we just announced in our press release last week that we did hit 100,000, which is the quickest for a congressional candidate, Democratic candidate in the district. So I think that's the other thing is, we got to make those coalitions and sort of get that money to make sure that we're competitive in November.
Yeah. Yeah. How do you stay positive in the midst of all of this?
I'm a pretty optimistic person. I'm also pragmatic. I know not everything is going to go the way I want it to. But like, okay, well, I'm a designer, so this is the situation we have. Like, how do we make it into the preferred situation that we want, and sort of work from that way. And so there's always a way. My dad used to call me MacGyver because I was always like, all right, here's what we got to do, and here's what I have to do it. Let's make it happen.
Well, I feel like we could use a MacGyver in Congress for sure. I love this idea of you being kind of a pragmatic optimist and optimistic pragmatist. You're a happy warrior for solving problems. How can people find you? How can they help? What do you need?
Yeah, definitely go to my website. That's KyleKilbourn.com. And there's a bunch of things you can do and support me with. I have my social media links, so it's also, give me a follow there. If you want to endorse me, this is a very grassroots campaign. We're not taking any corporate PACs money. And so we need your grassroots endorsements. Volunteer, there's a link to get involved to volunteer there. We are looking for a lot of volunteers to help us make calls, knock doors, get the word out. And then, if you're in a position to financially donate, that's always an option and is very helpful for a campaign like ours.
Yeah, boy. Kyle, thank you so much. Thank you for running for office. Thank you for putting yourself out there like that. And thank you for spending some time with us today.
Well, thank you, Rob. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
It was a pleasure.
And thanks everyone for listening to this conversation with Kyle Kilbourn, who's a candidate for Congress in Wisconsin's 7th congressional district. Conversations like this will be happening every Wednesday between now and Election Day, and encourage you to listen in each week wherever you listen to podcasts. You can learn more about Kyle and all of the other candidates for common good by visiting candidates